Good afternoon, students. This is Dr. Akash Patil. Today we are going to study the exterior of the skull. The exterior of the skull is studied under three headings, that is norma verticalis, norma occipitalis, and norma lateralis. Let us see the norma verticalis first. Norma verticalis. When viewed from above the skull, it is usually oval in shape. It is wider posteriorly than anteriorly. It is wider posteriorly than anteriorly. Now let us see the bones which takes part in the formation of norma verticalis. The upper part of frontal bone anteriorly. The upper part of occipital bone posteriorly. A parietal bone on each side. Sutures. Coronal suture. This is placed between the frontal bone and two parietal bones. This one is the coronal suture, which is placed between the frontal bone and two parietal bone. The suture crosses the cranial vault from side to side and runs downwards and forwards. Sagittal suture. It is placed in the median plane between the parietal bones. These two are parietal bones. It is placed in the median plane. This one is the sagittal suture. Lambdoid suture. It lies posteriorly between the occipital and two parietal bones, and it runs downwards and forwards across the cranial vault. This one is the lambdoid suture. Metopic suture. This is occasionally present in about 3 to 8% individuals. It lies in the median plane and separates the two halves of the frontal bone. Normally, it fuses at 6 years of age. If at all metopic suture was present, means it is present here. In some person, in few persons, metopic suture can be seen, which normally fuses at 6 years of age. Now let us see some other named features of the norma verticalis. Vertex. Vertex is the highest point on the sagittal suture. This is the vertex, which is the highest point on the sagittal suture. Vault of skull is the arched roof for the dome of skull. And the bregma, which is also called anterior fontanella, is the point between the coronal and sagittal suture. Here you can see it is the point between the coronal and meeting of coronal and sagittal suture. This point we call as bregma, which is also called as anterior fontanella. In fetal skull, this is the site of membranous gap called the anterior fontanella. In fetal skull, this is a site of membranous gap called anterior fontanella, which closes at 18 to 24 months of age. It allows growth of brain. The function of this anterior fontanella is to allow the growth of brain. The lambda or posterior fontanella. The next fontanella is lambda. Here you can see, or posterior fontanella. Is the meeting point between the sagittal and the lambdoid suture. This one is the lambdoid suture and this is the sagittal suture. The meeting point of this we called as lambdoid suture or the posterior fontanella. In fetal skull, this is the site of posterior fontanella, which closes at 2 to 3 months of age. The posterior fontanelle closes at 2 to 3 months of age, whereas the anterior fontanelle closes at 18 to 24 months of age. The parietal tuber or eminence is the area of maximum convexity of the parietal bone. This one is the parietal eminence. This is the common site of fracture of the skull. This parietal tuber is the common site of fracture of the skull. The parietal foramen, one on each side, pierces the parietal bone near its upper border, 2.5 centimeter to 4 centimeter in front of the lambda. Here you can see this one, these two are the parietal foramens, which are present 2.5 to 4 centimeter in front of the lambda. The parietal foramen transmits an emissary vein from the veins of scalp to the superior sagittal sinus. It transmits the emissary vein to the superior sagittal sinus. Next, the obelion. The obelion is the point on the sagittal suture between the two parietal foramen. Between these two parietal foramen is the obelion. The temporal lines. At the zygomatic process of the frontal bone, arch backwards and forwards and cross the frontal bone, the coronal suture and the parietal bone. Over the parietal bone, there are two lines, superior and inferior. Traced anteriorly, they fuse to form a single line. Traced posteriorly, the superior line fades out over the posterior part of the parietal bone, but the inferior temporal line continues downwards and forwards with zygomatic arch. Now let us see the clinical anatomy part of this norma verticalis. Fontanelles. Fontanelles are the sites of growth of the skull, permitting the growth of brain and helps to determine the age. If fontanelles fuse early, brain growth is stunted. Such children are less intelligent. Here you can see in this diagram, this one is the anterior fontanelle, which closes by 18 to 24 months of age, and this one is the posterior fontanelle. This is the posterolateral fontanelle, also called as mastoid fontanelle, which closes by 12 months, and the one on each side, that is anterolateral or sphenoid fontanelle, which closes by 2 to 3 months. So total 6 fontanelles are present after birth. If anterior fontanelle is bulging, there is a raised intracranial pressure. The bulge of anterior fontanelle indicates there is a rise of intracranial pressure. If anterior fontanelle is depressed, it shows decreased intracranial pressure, mostly due to dehydration. So the bulging and depression of the anterior fontanelle gives the indication of the rise of intracranial pressure. By looking at this, we can make out the intracranial pressure, whether it is raised or has fallen down. Bones. Override at the fontanelle, helping to decrease the size of head during the vaginal delivery. This fontanelles helps to override the bones and to accommodate the vaginal canal, birth canal. So it helps in molding of bones during vaginal delivery. Caput succedanum is the soft tissue swelling on any part of the skull due to rupture of capillaries during delivery. Skull becomes normal within a few days in posterior line. Here you can see this one is the caput succedanum, which is a soft tissue swelling on any part of the skull due to rupture of capillaries during the delivery. Now let us see the next part, that is norma occipitalis. Norma occipitalis is convex upwards and on each side and is flattened below. The bones which forms the norma occipitalis are posterior part of parietal bones above upper part of the squamous part of the occipital bone below, mastoid part of the temporal bone on each side. Sutures. The lambdoid suture lies between the occipital bone and the two parietal bones. This is the occipital bone and these are two parietal bones. This one is the lambdoid suture. The occipito-mastoid suture lies between the occipital bone and the mastoid part of the temporal bone. This is the occipito-mastoid suture, which lies between the occipit and the mastoid bone, mastoid part of the temporal bone. The parieto-mastoid suture lies between the parietal bone and the mastoid part of the temporal bone. The posterior part of the sagittal suture is also seen in the occipital, norma occipitalis. Here you can see the posterior part of the sagittal suture. Now let us see the other features of norma occipitalis. The external occipital protuberance is the median prominence in the lower part of this norma. Here you can see this is the external occipital protuberance. It marks the junction of head and neck. The most prominent point on this protuberance is the inion. The superior nuchal lines are curved bony ridges passing laterally from the protuberance. These are the superior nuchal lines which are passing from the median point, that is occipital, external occipital protuberance. These also mark the junction of head and neck. Along with the external occipital protuberance, these also mark the junction of head and the neck. The area below the superior nuchal line will be situated with the norma basalis. Below this we consider it as norma basalis, which we will learn in the next class. The highest nuchal lines are not always present. They are curved bony ridges situated above 1 cm above the superior nuchal lines. If the highest nuchal lines are present, they are situated 1 cm above the superior nuchal lines. They begin from the upper part of the external occipital protuberance and are more arched than the superior nuchal lines. The mastoid foramen is located on the mastoid part of the temporal bone at or near the occipito-mastoid suture. Here, this is the mastoid foramen. You can make out here the mastoid foramen. Internally, it opens at the sigmoid sulcus. This foramen internally opens at the sigmoid sulcus. The mastoid foramen transmits an emissary vein and the meningeal branch of occipital artery. It transmits emissary vein and the meningeal branch of the occipital artery. Now let us see the attachments of the norma occipitalis. What all the muscles it gives attachment. The upper part of the external occipital protuberance gives origin to trapezius, and the lower part gives attachment to lower end of the ligamentum nuchae. The medial 1/3 of the superior nuchal line gives origin to trapezius, and the lateral part provides insertion to the sternocleidomastoid above and to the splenius capitis below. That is this upper part of the external occipital protuberance. This gives rise to the trapezius, and the lower part of it gives rise to ligamentum nuchae. And medial 1/3 of this superior nuchal lines gives origin to trapezius, and the lateral 1/3 provides attachment to the sternocleidomastoid and splenius capitis. The highest nuchal lines, if present, provide attachment to the epicranial aponeurosis medially and give origin to the occipitalis or occipital belly of occipitofrontalis muscle laterally. In case of absence of highest nuchal lines, these structures are attached to the superior nuchal lines. Here you can see the attachments of occipitofrontalis muscle to the highest nuchal lines. Now let us see the third part of the normas, that is norma lateralis. The bones which forms the norma lateralis are the frontal bone, the parietal bone, the occipital bone, the temporal bone, the sphenoid bone, the zygomatic bone, mandible, maxilla, and the nasal bone. These bones forms the norma lateralis. Now let us see the features of the norma lateralis. Temporal lines. The temporal lines have been studied in the norma verticalis. The inferior temporal line in its posterior part turns downwards and forwards and becomes continuous with the supramastoid crest on the squamous temporal bone near its junction with the mastoid temporal. This crest is continuous anteriorly with the posterior root of zygomatic arch. Here you can see this is the superior temporal line and the inferior temporal line. Now let us see the zygomatic arch, also known as zygoma. The zygomatic arch is a horizontal bar on the side of the head, in front of the ear, a little above the tragus. It is formed by the temporal process of zygomatic bone in the anterior 1/3 and the zygomatic process of the temporal bone in the posterior 2/3. The zygomatico-temporal suture crosses the arch obliquely downwards and forwards. Obliquely downwards and backwards. Above the zygomatic arch is the temporal fossa, which is filled by the temporalis muscle. This one is the temporal fossa, which is filled by the temporalis muscle, attached to the lower margin of zygomatic arch. This one is the zygomatic arch. Lower margin attached to the zygomatic arch is the masseter muscle. Contraction of both temporalis and the masseter may be felt by clenching the teeth. When you clench the teeth, you can feel this muscle, temporalis and the masseter muscle, both can be felt after clenching of the teeth. The arch is separated from side of the skull by gap which is deeper in front than behind. Its lateral surface is subcutaneous. The anterior end of the upper border is called the jugal point. The posterior end of the zygomatic arch is attached to the squamous temporal bone by anterior and posterior roots. The articular tubercle of the root of the zygoma lies on its lower border at the junction of the anterior and posterior roots. Now let us see the external acoustic meatus. This one is the external acoustic meatus. The external acoustic meatus opens just above the posterior part of the posterior root of zygoma. Its anterior and inferior margins and the lower part of the posterior margin are formed by the tympanic plate. This one is the tympanic plate. That is the lower part of the posterior margin and anterior and inferior margin are formed by the tympanic plate, and the posterior superior margin is formed by the squamous temporal bone. The margins are roughened for the attachment of articular cartilage. Now let us see the suprameatal triangle, also called the triangle of McQueen. It is a small depression posterior superior to the meatus. Here you can see this is the triangle of McQueen, which is present posterior superior to the meatus. It is bounded above by the supramastoid crest, in the front by the posterior superior margin of the external meatus, and behind by the vertical tangent to the posterior margin of the meatus. The suprameatal spine may be present on the anterior-inferior margin of the triangle. The triangle forms the lateral wall of the tympanic or mastoid antrum. Now let us see the mastoid part of the temporal bone. This is the mastoid process, which is a part of temporal bone. It lies just behind the external acoustic meatus. It is continuous anterosuperiorly with the squamous temporal bone. A partially obliterated squamomastoid suture may be visible in front of and parallel to the roughened area for muscular insertion. The mastoid temporal bone articulates posterior superiorly with the posterior inferior part of the parietal bone at the horizontal parieto-mastoid suture, and posteriorly with squamous occipital bone at the occipito-mastoid suture. The mastoid process is a breast-like projection. It is a breast-like projection from the lower part of the mastoid temporal bone and posterior inferior to the external acoustic meatus. It appears during the second year of the life. Please note the point, it appears during the second year of the life. The tympanomastoid fissure is placed on the anterior aspect of the base of the mastoid process. The mastoid foramen lies at or near the occipito-mastoid suture. Styloid process. This is the styloid process. The styloid process is a needle-like thin, long projection from the temporal bone seen in Norma basalis, situated anteromedially to the mastoid process. It is directed downwards, forwards, and slightly medially. Its base is partly encased by the tympanic plate. The apex or the tip is usually hidden from the view by the posterior border of ramus of the mandible. Now let us see the attachments of the norma lateralis. The temporal fascia is attached to the superior temporal line and to the area between the two temporal lines. Inferiorly, it is attached to the outer and inner lips of the upper border of the zygomatic arch. The temporalis muscle arises from the whole of the temporal fossa. This is the temporal fossa. It arises from whole of the temporal fossa except the part formed by the zygomatic bone. Beneath the muscle there lie the deep temporal vessels and nerves. Beneath the muscle there lie the deep temporal vessels and nerves. The middle temporal vessels produce vascular markings on the temporal bone just above the external acoustic meatus. The medial surface and the lower border of the zygomatic arch give origin to the masseter. The lateral ligament of the temporomandibular joint is attached to the tubercle of the root of the zygoma. The sternocleidomastoid, splenius capitis, and longissimus capitis are inserted from before backward on the posterior part of the lateral surface of the mastoid process. Posteriorly, belly of digastric arises from mastoid notch. The groove obliquely placed behind mastoid notch is due to the occipital artery. The gap between the zygomatic arch and the sides of the skull transmits the following structures, that is the tendon of temporalis muscle, deep temporal vessels, deep temporal nerves. Now let us see the structures which are passing through the foramina. The tympanomastoid fissure on the anterior aspect of the base of the mastoid process transmits the auricular branch of vagus nerve. The mastoid foramen transmits an emissary vein connecting the sigmoid sinus with the posterior auricular vein, and a meningeal branch of occipital artery. So overall, the mastoid foramen transmits an emissary vein and a meningeal branch of occipital artery. The zygomatico-temporal foramen transmits the nerve of the same name and a minute artery. Now let us discuss the clinical anatomy part of the norma lateralis. Pterion. This is the pterion, that is the anterolateral fontanelle, is a thin part of the skull. This is the thinnest part of the skull. In roadside accidents, the anterior division of middle meningeal artery may be ruptured. The anterior division of middle meningeal artery may be ruptured because it lies beneath the pterion, leading to a clot formation between the skull bone and the dura mater or extradural hemorrhage. We call that as extradural hemorrhage. The clot compresses the motor area of the brain, leading to paralysis of the opposite side. The clot must be sucked out at the earliest by trephining. The head must be protected by helmet. So to prevent that injury to that pterion, which is the thinnest part of the skull, we must wear the helmet while driving. Here you can see the extradural hemorrhage between the dura mater and the inner table of the skull. It is due to the rupture of an anterior division of middle meningeal artery. So this is all about the today's discussion, that is norma lateralis, norma occipitalis and norma verticalis. Hope you understood the class. Thank you.